Powered by NECC. Sunday ho ya Monday, रोज खाओ अंडे. Co-powered by Dish HD, cricket का असली partner.
Good evening, hello and welcome. You're with the news today. This is your primetime destination news. Newsmakers, talking points, Monday night, start of a brand new week. The big question, taming fuel prices. Why are states reluctant to bite the tax bullet? We'll be joined by Tamil Nadu's Finance Minister, Dr. Palanivel Thiagarajan, joining me in a short while. We'll also be looking at America's new economic alliance, which India has agreed to join in Tokyo. What does it mean? All that and more. But first, as always, the 9 headlines at 9 tonight. After MK Stalin, now West Bengal Chief Minister Mamata Banerjee also refuses to cut tax on fuel, says centre earning crores through excise. Several BJP states also yet to lower taxes 48 hours after the centre lowered excise. India joins the US-led Indo-Pacific economic framework aimed to counter China. PM addresses Indian diaspora in Tokyo, says India is resetting the world order. Hearing on the Gyan Vapi case concludes in a Varanasi court. Verdict tomorrow on how the matter will now proceed in a district court. Gyan Vapi moment also for Karnataka. Hindu temple-like architecture found in the mosque during renovation work in Mangaluru. With Karnataka polls slated for next year, Karnataka Congress Chief Minister Chief DK Shivkumar throws his hat in the ring, tells India Today he's worked hard for 2 years for the Congress when asked on the CM face issue. Global monkeypox outbreak threat looms, a disease that has largely remained confined to Africa. Nearly 100 cases reported, 28 being monitored globally. US fights for mega Indian Navy jet deal. America goes all out. Biden woos India. 2 US Navy Super Hornet fighters land in Goa. Markets wipe off all gains. Sensex Nifty end marginally lower amidst volatility. Auto stocks rally while metal pack bleeds as government imposes export duties. And rain and storm blow away 11 degrees Celsius of the heat wave from Delhi NCR. Strong winds and heavy rains uproot trees, collapse walls, waterlogged streets. Pre-monsoon showers in several parts of the country. But first, the breaking news that's coming in. West Bengal Chief Minister Mamata Banerjee has become the latest opposition chief minister to hit out at the centre over the recent cut in excise duty on petrol and diesel. Calling the government's move an election stunt, Mamata has said the Bengal government will not reduce state VAT on diesel and petrol. She's accusing the centre of earning a big revenue from excise tax. Now, this comes a day after the Tamil Nadu government also said it is unfair and unreasonable for the centre to expect states to cut tax. Only 4 states have so far joined the centre's plea to cut taxes. Not all BJP states also have cut taxes as yet. Now, all of this is taking us to our top story tonight, which is on the centre-state face-off over fuel taxes. That's right. It was 2 days ago that Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman announced the excise duty cut on petrol by 8 rupees and a duty on diesel by 6 rupees. The Finance Minister had urged states to take the cue. However, several states appear reluctant to cut taxes. Only 4 have cut taxes so far. Kerala has cut VAT on petrol by 2.41 rupees per litre and 1.36 on diesel. Maharashtra has cut rupees 2.08 rupees on petrol and 1.44 on diesel. Rajasthan, rupees 2.48 on petrol and 1.16 rupees on diesel. And Orissa has slashed VAT by rupees 2.23 on petrol and rupees 1.36 on diesel. Some of these flashes, remember, some of these cuts are basically based on levying different, but with fuel not coming under GST and states levying different rates of VAT, fuel costs are now varying from city to city. Just take a look at this. Delhi is at 96.72 paise. Kolkata is 106.03 paise. You paid 10 rupees more to Delhi if you're in Kolkata. Mumbai even higher even now, 111.35. Chennai, 102.63. Bengaluru, remember this is a BJP ruled state, 101.94. Hyderabad, one of the highest, 109.66. Ahmedabad, which is also BJP ruled, 96.49. So if you see there's a big difference between an Ahmedabad and a Mumbai, almost 15 rupees. Now, these differential tax rate cuts bring us to our top story tonight. So, why is it that state after state we are witnessing these differential rates? Take a look at that again. 96 is versus 111. Only 4 states, as I said, have cut the taxes. Many of them are saying that it is not they are not willing to do so. Mamata Banerjee, of course, was the latest chief minister to speak out against the centre. Why is it that so many state governments are reluctant to follow the centre's cue? That's our top story. Listen in at the moment to an interview I just did a short while ago with Tamil Nadu's finance minister. And joining me now is Dr. Palanivel Thiagarajan, the finance minister of Tamil Nadu. Appreciate your joining us, Dr. Thiagarajan. Make sense of this for us, because the centre goes ahead and announces an excise duty cut on petrol by a record 8 rupees per litre and 6 rupees on diesel. And then the Tamil Nadu government says, look, we are not going to cut any taxes because that would not be a fair and reasonable thing to do. Explain those words for us, fair and reasonable.
Yeah, I wonder, Rajdeep, first of all, thank you for having me, but I wonder how come you guys get fed words like record. When they raised it almost 30 rupees on diesel and they raised it 27 rupees or 23 rupees on petrol, did you guys talk about record raises then? They have cut some portion of what they raised. All of a sudden you start talking record as if they're like, doing things never seen in the history of the world. They are still 3 times the rate they were or more, or 5 times the rate they were on diesel, and double the rate they were on petrol when they inherited the government. So, let's not get carried away, number one. Number two, when in the history of the 11 raises did they ever talk to any state government and say, you raise with me or you raise alongside, or what are your thoughts about my raise? I don't understand why this country seems to be in this kind of collective insanity, that every time they say something, you all jump as if it's a gospel truth come down from God. Where in the Constitution does it say that because the union says so, the states have to cut?
No, it's not about, you are not obligated. No, you are not obligated to cut, Dr. Thiagarajan. The question is, why do you say it is unfair and unreasonable for you to do so? The fact is, the centre has taken the burden by cutting the additional excise duty. It's very clear that the burden of more than 2.21 lakh crores of this cut is going on the centre. Why would states not take the cue?
First of all, you need to do your math. Just because they tell you some number doesn't imply that number is correct. What the fuel consumption over the last 5 years average, if we take, there's no way they're losing that much money. Anyway, that's let them gives that hype.
No, that's the claim. Their claim is that's what it's going to cost the exchequer.
That's fine. I can claim anything. Somebody has to do the math. I've done the math. The math is very high. I'm saying they raised it, they cut it. They have not cut it nearly as much as they raised it. Why is that a moral high ground? You talk as if they have done something like, self-sacrificing. They have unlimited ability to borrow. Nobody polices them.
With due regard, sir, before we buy, let me say I haven't said that the centre is taking the moral high ground. All I'm saying is the centre has taken a decision which many people were expecting and were hoping for. Why are states not taking the cue? Explain that to me, opposition ruled states.
No, I don't understand why states should take the cue from the centre. You keep asking me a question that makes no sense to me. For example, the government of Tamil Nadu cut the VAT back in August of 2021. Should the union government have taken a cue from the Tamil Nadu government? What are you talking about? The Constitution gives completely different responsibilities as far as money management is concerned to the union, completely different ones to the states. And surprisingly, for the first time, the Supreme Court has opined on the states' right to legislate their own revenues in the GST judgment that came down 4 days ago. I don't understand why you keep saying there has to be any interlinkage. What were they doing when they raised? Did we raise? They have cut back about half of what they raised. Our predecessors, in the history of the DMK government, we have never raised the VAT on petrol or diesel ever. In the previous government under Thalaivar Kalaignar, they cut it 3 times. In this government under my leader, we cut it once. And every time they have cut the taxes because we do ad valorem VAT, we have lost another 1 rupee 69 on petrol and another 1 rupee and 6 or so. No, I'll tell you exactly. 1 rupee 76 on diesel because ours ad valorem is on top of their excise. So we are going along. If we really wanted to assert our independence, we would change the structure of our VAT and get back to the number we had budgeted for when we did our budgets. You remember there's something called
Dr. Tyagarajan. Dr. Tyagarajan,
we have to balance our budgets.
No, step back. There are 2 issues you seem to be raising. Number one, you're suggesting that if at all states are expected to take a cue from the center, then the center should have consulted the state both when raising the taxes and now when lowering the taxes. Your critics will argue that when, for example, the DMK was in power with the UP at the center between 2004 and 14, it's not as if every time taxes were raised or cut, the states were consulted. I mean, you seem to be arguing, saying that consultation should take place.
No problem. Then let's go back to that. Let the constitution apply. Why all of a sudden do you have a new moral ground or a new standard or a new bedrock that every time they cut, we have to act on their cue? We act as we see fit. The constitution empowers us to do so. We have multiple responsibilities to balance. After 1 year of record improvement in our finances, we still have almost 50,000 crore revenue deficit. That is grossly outside the FRBM FRA Act. If we don't correct that, who will we go to and ask for authorization? Again, back to the union government. So we are doing as we see fit. The chief minister will tell me what day to cut. Let us be very clear. 2 things benefit Tamil Nadu greatly compared to the country average. Our inflation is only about 5.4%. The country average is 8%. In some states, it's more than 9%. Number 2, our growth has been really good above 9% for the last year and projected this way. So we don't yet see the need to take any additional action. I've already told you we have lost almost 2,000 crores of revenue on petrol and diesel because of the union's cut. Before that, we voluntarily cut before the union cut in 2021 November. We cut in August. We lost money then also. So we are managing our finances the way the people who elected us expect us to do under the constitution. We don't take cues from anybody.
Therefore, your second reluctance seems to come from the fact that you cannot take more strain on your revenue. Now, you might recall the Prime Minister last month had invoked the spirit of cooperative federalism, saying had Karnataka not cut taxes, it would have collected an additional over 5,000 crores in revenue. Gujarat would have collected 3,500, 4,000 crores more. If certain states can do it, why can't others? The indication was that Tamil Nadu, Bengal, today Mamata Banerjee is also saying that she's not going to cut taxes because she wants additional revenues.
You can't keep parroting these propaganda statements. I ask you 2 questions. My friend Kanubhai Desai has not cut in Gujarat this time. Why don't you remind me of that? Why don't you tell me that Madhya Pradesh still has the highest VAT on petrol? Is it a BJP government running Madhya Pradesh or a DMK government running Madhya Pradesh? You guys take selective data. What is
Dr. Tyagarajan, just a minute, sir. One minute.
Back to us.
Dr. Tyagarajan, at the moment, petrol prices, rupees per litre, Delhi 96.72, Kolkata 106.03, Mumbai 111.35, Chennai 102.63, Bengaluru 101.94, Ahmedabad is 96.49. So Ahmedabad much lower. The difference between Ahmedabad and Mumbai is 15 rupees. Between Ahmedabad and Chennai is 6 rupees.
Mumbai is Mumbai, Gujarat is Gujarat, Tamil Nadu is Tamil Nadu. There's a reason the constitution envisioned as having states. Every state's finances are in a different situation. Gujarat doesn't have a revenue deficit nearly as bad. We inherited a mess from our predecessors after 8 years. Ask me what is the inflation in Gujarat and what is the inflation in Tamil Nadu. My inflation is lower. We are managing the economy better. In almost any statistic, from GSDP growth to inflation to revenue deficit, to fiscal deficit, to improvement in 1 year, Tamil Nadu has outperformed any other state or the union.
So the revenue deficits that exist today, sir, with due regard, the revenue deficits that exist in several states, including Bengal run by Mamata Banerjee or DMK run Tamil Nadu, is also because of the enormous amounts you all have spent on the so-called freebies. You make all these promises and then find you don't have the budgets to meet it.
At least as well as you, right? Surely I know my job at least as well as you. I know how to get the outcome that my chief minister tells me to get. We will have better growth, lower revenue deficit, lower fiscal deficit, come into compliance in 2 years, and we have inflation contained and jobs and growth being created. We want to be left alone to do our job without being intruded on by somebody whose average performance in every measure, in every statistic, is much worse than Tamil Nadu's. Please let us do our job. Don't try to drag us down to some lowest common denominator. Leave us be.
No, you want your to be left alone, but the fact is, are we saying that when the center does not slash fuel prices, the center is targeted, saying the center has made large amounts of money over the last 7-8 years. Mr. Chidambaram's figure is 26.5 lakh crores have been made through this tax, through taxation on fuel. Now when it slashes it, you say, look, leave us on our own. Please don't tell us what to do. You can't. You're caught, as Chidambaram says, between the devil and the deep blue sea.
I know. I can't be responding to Mr. Chidambaram's statements. I'm telling you what I'm saying, which I put out in a statement. If you haven't read it, I'm happy to send it to you. After these cuts, the union has still doubled the taxes on petrol compared to 14, and more than 5 times the taxes on diesel compared to 14. If they cut some small part of what they rose exorbitantly, exponentially, immorally, discompassionately, you guys all jump up and down, cheerleaders saying, oh, what a great man, he has given us partial kindness. We never raised it that much. We never raised it at all. Our predecessors in the ADMK never raised it that much. There isn't that much for us to cut. Why can't you look at history? Why do we all have to suffer collective amnesia? It's not as if they came and they only cut.
Are you saying, Dr. Tyagarajan, that you want... Sir, just a minute. Are you saying, Dr. Tyagarajan, that you want the central government to return to pre-2014 figures, levels of excise duty cuts? Is that what you're saying?
No, I'm not asking pre. I'm saying 2014 figures. It's a written statement. Please read. If not, I'll send it to you again. It's a public statement made on behalf of the government of Tamil Nadu.
I've read yours
through the DIPR.
Sir, are you saying, I want clarity, are you saying therefore that you will cut your taxes, state taxes, if the center returns back to 2014 numbers, then you will believe that there's a sense of equality and reasonableness? Is that what you're saying?
Rajdeep, you need to do some basic math. We cut the taxes 3 rupees ourselves on petrol, and the 2 cuts the union has done has also deprived of another 1 rupee and 69 paisa of taxes, because we do ad valorem taxes.
That was the November tax cut, sir. So that was the November tax cut.
No, that's including the tax cut from day before yesterday. That's what I'm trying to tell you. Were they to cut their taxes back to 2014 levels, our taxes would go down to 2014 levels also. We have already lost 4 rupees 69 paisa per litre on petrol, 3 voluntarily and 169 quasi-involuntarily. We could have rejiggered our VAT or restructured it in rupees versus percentage to overcome their reduction. We didn't. Same way in diesel, we have already lost 1 rupee 76 paisa. When they cut 10 rupees, we lost 110. When they cut 6 rupees, we lost 66 paisa. We have already lost 176. We are just not going chest thumping about it. We are compassionate people. We get outcomes. Our people trust us. We are happy to do our job. Those who have raised it excessively should cut it back. Those who have raised it excessively, cut back part of it and become heroes. Those who have never raised it, those who have already cut it a bit, become villains. What world do we live in? Upside down world.
So, an honest answer, how much of this then is politics? How much of this is pure economics? How much of this is because of the nature of the trust deficit that exists today between the center and the states? That's what's leading to states, particularly opposition states, not willing to simply stand in line every time the center says stand up and slash rates. How much of this is politics?
I've known you a little while. Please answer one question for me. You have known Gujarat politics for a long time. You come from around that area of the country. Imagine this was 2013 and the union prime minister was Dr. Monsoon Singh. And you know your good friend who was the chief minister of Gujarat at that time. Imagine the union had done all of the things it has done in the last 7 years, 8 years, let alone in the last 2 months. Imagine the union had called the states. Imagine Dr. Monsoon Singh had called on all the chief ministers to cut the taxes. What would have been the reaction of the then chief minister of Gujarat? You can't keep making this stuff up, right? There's a history.
That's a bit of whataboutery. That's a bit of whataboutery.
The greatest example for me, who I follow, the greatest vocal leader for states' rights in the history of India is through Narendra Modi, the current Prime Minister, when he was Chief Minister of Gujarat. I'm only following in his footsteps. I'm not saying anything new. Not 1% of what I'm saying is new.
Okay, my final question to you, how do you therefore, going ahead, given the fact that we are in an environment where global oil prices are likely to remain high, what do you see as a solution to ensure a more reasonable rate is passed on, the benefits are passed on to consumers? Because when oil prices were low, between 2015 and 18, the benefits were never passed on to the consumer. Now we are in 2022.
Who didn't pass it on? Who didn't pass it on? The union didn't pass it on.
The center conceded. I'm conceding that. My point is now in 2022, you tell me, I'm speaking as a consumer and citizen, what's the solution for a more rational tax structure?
Rajdeep, I have already made my position clear on the petrol diesel. It's an official statement. I want to talk a bit deeper because you can understand what I'm saying. The job of a ministry of a government as far as the finances and economy goes is to create an environment where inflation is contained to some extent. The monetary policy sets a lot of it, but what is within the fiscal policy constraint of ours, to make sure that inflation is contained, to make sure that growth is good, to make sure that jobs are created. In Tamil Nadu, in the last year, we have done phenomenally well on all three. Inflation is 5.4%, the national average is 7.9%. Our per capita income is 3 lakh rupees, which is much higher, double the national average. In 1 year, we have brought the revenue deficit down by 20,000 crores and the fiscal deficit down by more than 1 percentage point. Our fiscal deficit is 3.5% compared to the unions at almost 7%. Right? We had a positive growth 2021 when the country had a negative recession of 7.6%. We were plus 1.3 or 1.5. This year, we are plus 9% when the unions at 8.9. So take the combined effect of two. We have grown substantially better than the national average. What is it you want us to do that we are not already doing? What outcome do you expect better than this? I don't understand.
Okay. So your argument is leave the states alone. We will manage our resources. We will manage our finances. Do not dictate to us. You cannot tell us when we have to slash our taxes, when we have to raise it. Am I correct? Broadly, that's the spirit which you want to be implemented.
That's how I read the Constitution. Maybe you have a different interpretation. I'd like to hear it, but that's how I read the Constitution. I'm a follower of the Constitution. That's all.
It would seem then that the only long-term solution, and that's my final question, is eventually to find a way in which fuel comes under some kind of a GST regime. We've discussed this in the past, but presumably that will only happen if all the states are on board. Am I correct? And that seems unlikely given that most states are facing revenue pressures.
Yeah, there's three issues here, Rajdeep. The first is the union not only shifted the taxes away from general excise, as the union finance minister very clearly explained. There are 4 components to excise, and 3 of them don't get shared to the states. So the shareable portion went down from almost 9 rupees to 1 rupee 40 paisa. So the states actually saw a decrease in revenue, even as the union's revenues and rates tripled and 10 times in diesel. So the first question is, how is that fair of cess and surcharge? Will that go away? Second question is, GST itself has some structural weaknesses, as you have seen, and as a recent judgment of the Supreme Court has pointed out. I have been the greatest proponent since I became a member that let us work it out, let us strengthen and fix the system, let us make it better. I'm not here just as a critic. I'm here as a member of the council, a member of the GOM on gaming, horse racing and casinos, a member of the GOM on structural reform, standing GOM, and doing as much as I can contribute to improve the system. The third point is states' rights have been greatly deprived by GST overall, as the ruling in the Supreme Court points out, have been curtailed, constrained. And so many states may be unwilling to give it up. But as far as Tamil Nadu is concerned, I'm okay to give it up as long as the cesses and surcharges are taken out in total. If it comes all under GST, the Chief Minister has told me that's our position. I follow his lead.
Okay, let me leave it there. Dr. Palanivel Thiagarajan, as always, combative, but extremely knowledgeable. Appreciate your joining us here on the news today. Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Presented by Aditya Birla Group, big in your life. Co-powered by only OLX Autos gives the best price for your car. Co-powered by NetMeds, India की अपनी pharmacy.
Now, you heard what the Tamil Nadu finance minister had to say while defending the state's right to hold on to their present tax structure on fuel. What does the centre have to say? Well, Union Petroleum Minister Rajdeep Puri is in Davos, where he spoke to India Today's Siddharth Zarabi and said that he expected all states to fall in line. Listen in to what Mr. Puri had to say.
The Prime Minister had, some time ago, made a pointed reference to the responsibility of states when it comes to oil sector duties. As we all know, it's not part of GST. Obviously, the BJP-ruled states have responded. Many haven't. And now, as I know at least, I think a few states have started to respond after yesterday's cut. What lies behind this state-center gap in this?
You know, if we were having an academic argument about different stakeholders in a system of cooperative federalism, it's a centre's right to raise revenue, it's a state's right to raise revenue. That would not be a focused discussion. The fact of the matter is that a citizen of India, whether he or she lives in a BJP-ruled state or in a non-BJP government, where there's a non-BJP government, that citizen has the same rights. And there are people from all segments of society. So how can you allow a situation where a BJP-ruled state, petrol is 15 rupees cheaper than in a non-BJP state? I told my friend, the Honorable Chief Minister of Delhi, and I use my words very carefully, I said, आप कम नहीं करना चाह रहे हैं, पर मैं आपको बताता हूँ, आपकी जियोग्राफिकल लोकेशन ऐसी है कि आपके पास और कोई चॉइस नहीं रहेगी. वही हुआ, उन्होंने नहीं कम किया पहली रिडक्शन के बाद, तो उनको लगा कि 20%, after a few days, 20% there was a shortage. Now, you can't go all the way from a place X to Y to fill up long distance. But if you are in a place like Delhi and you're traveling to Faridabad or Gurgaon, etc., so instead of filling here, you fill there.
वो तो border पता भी नहीं लग गया.
Border पता भी नहीं. तो जब 20% डीलर्स को फर्क पड़ा और ये हुआ, तो उन्होंने भी कम कर दिया.
तेल बढ़ता है, एक्साइज बढ़ती है, कभी घटती है. ये जो तेल का खेल है मंत्री जी, प्राइसिंग को लेके, और मैंने इसमें एक पत्रकार के नाते बहुत साल काम किया है. दो मुद्दे सर, ये फॉरेन पैरिटी पे प्राइसिंग होती है और उसको लेके जो ऑयल मार्केटिंग कंपनीज हैं उनको भी मुनाफा कमाना है, बट हैं तो सरकार की कंपनी, देश के नागरिक की कंपनी.
देखिए,
तेल के खेल में कुछ बदलाव होना चाहिए क्या फंडामेंटल?
देखिए, आप ऐसा है, दो एक्सट्रीम्स है, एक तो एडमिनिस्ट्रेड प्राइसिंग का सिस्टम और दूसरा है डीरेगुलेटेड सिस्टम. जी, आपको याद,
मैं आपको इंटरप्ट करूंगा, क्षमा करिएगा. डीरेगुलेटेड भी है, पर 5 महीने के लिए आपने रोका.
नहीं,
उस टाइम चुनाव थे मंत्री जी.
नहीं, गलत बात है ये. आप मेरे को बड़ी खुशी से इंटरप्ट करिए, पर मैं बेसिक फैक्ट्स रख दूं. जब कांग्रेस की सरकार थी तो मुझे याद है कि शायद 2010 में पेट्रोल के प्राइस जो है डीरेगुलेट हो गए थे, और 2014 में डीजल के. जी, वो हमारी सरकार के, बिल्कुल 2-3 महीने बाद. देखिए, ऐसा है, पेट्रोल का दाम किस पे डिपेंड करता है? इंटरनेशनल प्राइस, जी, द कॉस्ट ऑफ इंश्योरेंस एंड फ्रेट, जी, exchange rate, which can be significant.
बिल्कुल.
It depends on refining margin, etc. आप किसी OMC को कह रहे हैं ये सरकार की कंपनी है, उससे I take issue. देखिए, they are responsible corporate citizens. जी. अभी आप एक हुआ है कि हमारी 2 कंपनीज हैं जो बिल्कुल प्राइवेट सेक्टर की हैं. They have adopted a different path. अब मैं नाम नहीं लूंगा. जी. अच्छा, हमारी कंपनीज ये नहीं है स्थिति के सुबह उठते हैं और उनका कोई CMD मुझे फोन करता है, मंत्री जी बताइए क्या हुआ. देखिए, अगर आप कह रहे कि चुनाव के दौरान उन्होंने नहीं बढ़ाया, अरे चुनाव तो हमारे देश में, मैं आपको क्या बताऊं, 5 साल में हर साल होते हैं, और होते हैं तो एक चुनाव खत्म होता है, दूसरा शुरू हो जाता है.
So the centre strongly defending its position and putting the blame on the states. But what is the truth of this? We try to now explain to you exactly why are the centre and states in a tug of war virtually over fuel taxes. And what does that mean for you and me as consumers who are paying differential rates as we travel from one state to another? Take a look at just exactly what explains the fuel price fight.
For consumers, fuels have gone cheaper, but they continue to fuel political fires. The Narendra Modi government, with one excise cut in November and another on Saturday, signaled to the opposition-ruled states, "We have cut our taxes twice, now it's your turn." The options for these states had thinned as on April the 27th, Prime Minister Modi named 7 states in a meeting on COVID and stepped up the pressure for a reciprocal reduction.
देश हित में आप पिछले नवंबर में जो करना था 6 महीने डिले हो चुका है। अब भी आप अपने राज्य के नागरिकों को वैट कम करके इसका बेनिफिट पहुंचाइए।
Fearing the anti-Aam Aadmi tag, in the last 48 hours, 3 states took a tough economic call. Kerala has cut tax on petrol by 2.41 rupees and 1.36 rupees on diesel. Maharashtra, 2.08 rupees on petrol and rupees 1.44 on diesel. Odisha at 2.23 rupees on petrol and 1.36 rupees a litre on diesel. And Rajasthan, 2.48 rupees on petrol and 1.16 rupees on diesel. But the decision to cut taxes or not came with hostile salvos at the centre.
आप देख रहे हैं चुनाव के बाद में लगभग 10 रुपये बढ़ा दिया प्रति लीटर और कल घोषणा कर रही है कम करने की, तो उसके मायने क्या हुए? 9 रुपये कम कर दिए, 8 रुपये कम कर दिए, तो ये धोखा देने वाली बात है, जनता को धोखा देने वाली बात है।
पश्चिम बंगाल का चीफ मिनिस्टर आदरणीय ममता बनर्जी क्लियरली बोल दी है कि अगर हमको जो पैसा मिलना चाहिए 97.5 thousand करोड़ अगर सेंट्रल वो दे देंगे तो हम लोग अगले 5 साल कोई टैक्स नहीं भराएंगे।
The state's reluctance to cut taxes has a reason. In November 2021, 21 states, 17 ruled by the BJP, cut VAT. Across states, petrol went cheaper by 1.8 to 10 rupees and diesel 2 to 7 rupees. But these states lost almost 0.08% of their GDP. West Bengal lost 1,500 crore rupees due to the meager 1 rupee cut in November. Excise duty and VAT on fuels are the cash cows for the centre and the states. 18.4% of the centre's gross tax revenue comes from excise duty on fuel. Fuels and alcohol account for 25 to 35% of the state's own tax revenue. Central tax transfers comprise 25 to 29% of the state's gross revenue. State's own tax revenues makes 45 to 50%. The pandemic has dented the finances of all states. Large amounts of subsidies and freebies are a burden on every state budget. Since GST kicked in, states have little flexibility to adjust revenues as per their economic and political needs. And that's why on the centre's prod to cut fuel taxes, they aren't saying easily, aye aye sir. With Rahul Srivastav, Bureau Report, India Today.
The tangled world of the fiscal situation in India at the moment when it comes to centre versus states. Let's turn from there to our other big story tonight. Prime Minister Narendra Modi attended today the Indo-Pacific Trade Initiative, the latest US-led counter to China. Mr. Modi, remember, is in Tokyo where US President Joe Biden unveiled the Indo-Pacific Economic Framework for Prosperity, where he also held talks with Japan Prime Minister Fumio Kishida. Remember, all of this comes a day before the official Quad or 4-country meeting that will take place tomorrow. China has already reacted to the latest US-led initiative, calling it a strategy that creates division and incites confrontation. The Chinese foreign minister, in fact, called the new Indo-Pacific Economic Framework a strategy that is bound to fail.
भारत एक इंक्लूसिव और फ्लेक्सिबल इंडो पैसिफिक इकोनॉमिक फ्रेमवर्क के निर्माण के लिए आप सभी के साथ काम करेगा। मेरा मानना है कि हमारे बीच रेजिलियंट सप्लाई चेन्स के 3 मुख्य आधार होने चाहिए: ट्रस्ट, ट्रांसपेरेंसी एंड टाइमलीनेस। मुझे विश्वास है कि यह फ्रेमवर्क इन तीनों स्तंभों को मजबूत करने में सहायक होगा।
The very crucial Indo-Pacific Economic Forum was in fact launched in the presence of US President Joe Biden today. He was present to launch the IPEF, and other leaders like Prime Minister Narendra Modi as well as Japanese Prime Minister Fumio Kishida were present as well. 13 nations have come on board for the Indo-Pacific Economic Forum, the framework, and it is going to be extremely significant. This is of course a US-led trade initiative. It's not exactly a trade agreement as such, because the contours of it are still being discussed, but this is the US's push to be, participate economically as far as the economics of the Indo-Pacific region is concerned, to have a stronghold in that sense in the Indo-Pacific region. Now this especially after Donald Trump, US President Donald Trump, pulled out of the Trans-Pacific platform earlier, and that was something which, of course, had some sort of an impact, and there was a lot of criticism, and Biden was under pressure to, in fact, ensure that China's growing presence as far as an economic superpower is concerned in the Indo-Pacific region was countered in some sense, and hence the IPEF was, in fact, launched today.
So what does this Indo-Pacific economic framework really mean? Professor Harsh Pant, Vice President Foreign Policy at the Observer Research Foundation and also a professor at King's College in London, joins me. We also hope to be joined by Leela Ponnappa, former Deputy National Security Advisor. But first to you, Professor Pant, how do you see this Indo-Pacific economic framework actually working? Is it simply a US-led effort to counter China's economic clout that at the moment is really symbolic and doesn't really have the muscle to challenge the Chinese economic clout in the region?
Well, certainly, I think, Rajdeep, the unveiling of that is a step forward, because we have been hearing this for a long time now, that the economic engagement of the US in the Indo-Pacific is something that was of some concern to both the well-wishers of the US as well as the allies and partners of the US in the Indo-Pacific. We knew that the Trump administration had taken a hardline stance against China, but in the process, they had withdrawn from the Indo-Pacific economic mainstream. So there was a lot of concern that America is not in the economic game, and America's partners and allies, had been putting pressure on the US to do something about it. Now, what the Biden administration has tried to do is to come to a point where they are linking this, this Indo-Pacific economic framework with the domestic priorities. One of the most important statements from their perspective has been that this is linked to American middle classes, American workers, that it is going to help them. Now, I think they are trying to generate domestic support for it, and they are trying to look at it in the strategic context of coming back into the economic game in the Indo-Pacific. So as of now, whatever is available, it's very sketchy. But if it evolves in the right direction, then it has enormous potential as well, both to counter China as well as to do something more substantive about the economic imbalance in the region.
The reason I asked you this, Professor Pant, is as of now, the IPF won't include any market taxes commitments such as lowering. It won't include market access, doesn't include commitments like lowering tax barriers. It seems more of an administrative arrangement led by the United States. Will it evolve, in your view, to something substantial in the years ahead, given that there is a lot of friction between these countries when it comes to tariffs?
I do believe, because, we are in an age of loose coalitions. We are in an age where globalization is being looked at very differently. I think the whole approach to trade liberalization is something very unique today, where we are talking of trust, which Indian Prime Minister also talked about, both among the trading partners as well as those who want to construct a supply chain. So I think there is a sense that the new kinds of economic arrangements that are going to come out are going to be different. And we are looking at some of the arrangements that India itself is entering into. But certainly this is a loose administrative arrangement which talks about trade, but it also talks about, several other things. Decarbonization, standards of, health and working abilities. It talks about infrastructure connectivity. It talks about climate change and green energy transitions. So there are a number of factors which perhaps give you a more comprehensive arrangement in the Indo-Pacific, rather than simply looking at trade and investment, which of course are important. But I think given the way global economy is evolving, a number of the countries feel uncomfortable with the way China has used trade and investment, perhaps as tools of economic coercion. So I think this is a slightly better way to look at the arrangement, the fluidity in the relationships, as well as to respond to some of the challenges that still remain very, very nascent at this stage.
Leela Ponnappa, who joins us now, former ambassador, do you really believe India stands to benefit from this? Because India has been very ambivalent in the past about building stronger trade relations with countries that do not, in a way, ensure reciprocity. We did not even join RCEP. We've stayed away from trade alliances in the past. Suddenly now, becoming part of this agreement, US-led, do you believe India stands to benefit?
I think any discussion on trade and the widening of trade relationships is something that India should participate in. And it's a good thing that the kind of ambivalence and hesitation that India has shown in past years, I should really say decades, going back to when APEC started, is now sort of seeing some kind of a transformation, because this is really part of the evolving economic architecture, part and parcel really of the security architecture, but with an economic focus that is now taking shape. It's a little too soon to see too many things in it, but what was very interesting was in the statement that the White House put out, quite apart from the Quad members, there were 7 of 11 ASEAN members who had signed on. And I think this in itself goes to show that countries are exploring avenues, trying to see how in this changing circumstance they can try to gain benefits. I wouldn't
is it gain benefit
maximize.
or just contain China?
The devil is in the detail. The devil is in the detail, and the detail has yet to be addressed.
Right, which is precisely it. It seems at the moment an administrative arrangement. Is it primarily, in your view, to contain China, worried about China's growing economic clout, but still not sure how exactly this clout is to be contained?
I think certainly that's one of the factors. In a way, it's a kind of resurrection of the TPP, which Obama propagated and Trump then slashed down. Meanwhile, RCEP has taken shape, with India having participated in the negotiations and then at the last minute having said it would not join. So I do believe that, you see, China is trying to set up alternative institutions, obviously with itself at the center of it, whether as a military hegemon or as an economic hegemon. But this is an attempt really to broaden it. And what I found also particularly interesting in the PM statement was the use of the word flexible. I don't think there was any elaboration on it, but I think the idea was really that the door is open for those who would play by the rules. This is still exploratory. I would call it more than an administrative arrangement. I would say it is really a statement of intent. How it takes shape remains to be seen.
Let me give Professor Pant also a final word on that. As I said, India has been ambivalent in the past about building strong trade alliances in the region, in East Asia in particular. Do you see this as a change again in India's stance, in India that's now finally beginning to relook at its objectives?
Yes, to a certain extent. I think India cannot shy away from the fact that it has to, if it has to become a responsible stakeholder in the economic architecture in the Indo-Pacific, then something concrete has to be given to its partners, to like-minded partners that India is developing relationships with. But I think this particular format also helps India into integrating into the larger Indo-Pacific economic architecture, because this is not about, as you were saying, this is not about tariff barriers or reducing them or market access. This is about much broader principles, and along those principles, if India is able to operationalize them along with the Quad partners and the other partners that are joining the economic framework partnership, I think there is potential there for India also to become an integral part of the economic architecture in the region. But certainly India needs to do much more and much more aggressively on the economic and trade front.
Okay, so it's a small step forward in a sense, but a step in the right direction at the moment. As Ambassador Ponnappa pointed out, the devil could well lie eventually in the details. Remember, the big Quad meeting takes place tomorrow. We'll track that too in Tokyo. For now, Leela Ponnappa, Professor Pant, appreciate you joining me here on the News Tonight today. Up next, much needed relief from the heat wave. Are we seeing an early monsoon, and is that a good sign as rains are witnessed in the national capital and in several parts of the country? We'll be back with more. You're watching the news today. News without the noise, with a little bit of knowledge.
Make your media plan smarter with India Today Live TV on your connected devices. Amplify your brand with 100 million smart internet viewers. To advertise, mail us at sales@aajtak.com or call 9999892171. watching India Today.
Welcome back. Let's turn to some of the good news of the day. The national capital woke up to a fresh spell of rain and wind, giving respite from the heat wave that has spread across north and central India in the month of May. But it's not just Delhi. Bengaluru, Kerala too are witnessing heavy showers, pre-monsoon showers in several parts of the country that perhaps could suggest we could be heading for a good monsoon. What lies ahead? Here's a report.
First Kerala, then Bengaluru, and now the national capital. Heavy rainfall has brought much needed respite from the scorching heat in many states over the last 2 weeks. The summer rains in Kerala this year have been so strong they could rival the real monsoon. Many districts in the states are under orange alert, one step below the maximum red.
വെള്ളം കുറയും വിചാരിച്ചിട്ട് ഇതുവരെ കുറയുന്നില്ല. വണ്ടി എടുക്കാനും പറ്റാത്ത അവസ്ഥയിലാണ്. നാല് റോഡും ക്ലോസ് ചെയ്തേക്കുവാണ്. പിന്നെ പോകാനും അവസ്ഥയില്ലാത്ത ഒരു നിവൃത്തിയില്ലാത്ത അവസ്ഥയിലാണ് നിൽക്കുന്നത്.
നമ്മൾ മൊത്തത്തിൽ വെള്ളം പെട്ടെന്ന് അത് പ്രതീക്ഷിക്കാത്തൊരു മഴയായതുകൊണ്ട് നമുക്ക് ഒന്നും ചെയ്യാൻ പറ്റില്ല. കുറേ സാധനങ്ങൾക്ക് നഷ്ടപ്പെട്ടു പോയി.
The national capital on Monday woke up to strong gushing winds and heavy rains. The temperature in the region dropped by as much as 11 degrees Celsius from 40 plus to comfortable 20s. The Met Department predicts relief from heat wave conditions at least till May 28th.
The heat wave have been suppressed, abated already, and colder, lower than normal of the maximum temperature is coming. Today the temperature may touch something like 33 or something like that, massive fall of the temperature. Now this impact will remain for longer period.
In India's IT city, the minimum temperature dropped to 17.9 degrees. The lowest recorded in the month of May in 77 years. The Met Department, however, is cautious in predicting the onset on monsoon.
Already the pre-monsoon has been very intense during 17 to 19 May, but some of the conditions were not there. But we still hope around 27, plus minus 4 days, this condition will be fulfilled.
The monsoon is the lifeline of agriculture. This year, the unique weather formation is of particular interest as the world is battling the highest inflation in decades. A good monsoon can lead to higher agricultural production and help India check the skyrocketing prices. With Kumar Kunal in Delhi, Bureau Report, India Today.
Okay, so now while there's rain relief for parts of the country, there are parts of the country that are still reeling under a drinking water crisis. Among the states has been Rajasthan. Several cities and towns in the state continue to face water scarcity. Our special series, Water Emergency Today, has a report from Rajasthan.
It is a fight for water every morning in many towns of Rajasthan in the summer as temperatures hover above 45 degrees Celsius. Water tankers are the lifeline. In Jaipur, they go to narrow lanes and by lanes to reach as many residents as possible. Arguments and even fist fights are common as people jostle for water when the tankers arrive.
पानी की समस्या कितनी ज्यादा है यहाँ पे?
बहुत ज्यादा है. एक दिन पानी नहीं आया, समझ लो टैंकर तो इतनी परेशानी हुई, इधर उधर से डिब्बा ले लेके फिर लाना पड़ता है पानी.
Depleting groundwater and rising temperature in this hot summer season has made the problem of water an acute one in the desert state of Rajasthan. Whether it be Dausa, Pali or Jaipur, thousands of people have been grappling with water crisis and want some succor from this problem, which does not seem to be ending anytime soon.
एक दूसरे से औरतों मार कुटावल हो जाती पानी के लिए. बरसातों में तो एक दिन छोड़कर एक दिन आता है. एक आज ही आया है ना, कल हमारे उधर आएगा.
In Nangal Bersi village in Dausa district, women gather around this one hand pump every evening after returning from work. The wait in the queue for water could last hours.
अब जो पानी दे रहे हैं उनको वो खारा पानी और ये सब गलत मिक्स करके खाड़ा बंदे का वगैरह, उसकी वजह से लोगों को, बुजुर्गों को उल्टी, दस्त, पेट की तकलीफ, बच्चों को पेट की तकलीफ, बुजुर्गों को पेट की तकलीफ, ये असहनीय है।
साला हमारी बेटी खांसू पानी ले आओगी तो डर और लागा जे अकेली कहाँ जाओगी, तावड़ा कमाया बड़वा दे रिश्ता इतना बंद करूंगी।
There have been several protests and agitations for getting regular water supply in Rajasthan. But successive governments have failed in ensuring clean drinking water for its voters. With Devankur in Jaipur, Bureau Report, India Today.
It's a defining image every summer, women having to walk miles there to fill water. Let's turn then from there and end tonight's program with a good news story. It comes from Pune, where a 90-year-old, 90, Reena Verma, who dreamt of visiting her childhood home in Pakistan's Rawalpindi, has got a visa to go there. Reena's family left Pakistan when she was just 15 years old. Since then, she's planned visits. It never materialized. It's tonight's Good News Today story. You stay well, stay safe. Good night, Shubhratri, Jai Hind, Namaskar.
मेरे पिताजी जिनका नाम भाई प्रेमचंद छिब्बर था, वो वहाँ पे
90-year-old Reena Verma from Pune dreamt of visiting her childhood home in Pakistan's Rawalpindi. Thanks to a video of hers that has gone viral, she will soon be able to fulfill her dream. The viral video was shot in July 2021 by a Pakistani journalist, Binish Sidh, who followed the India-Pakistan Heritage Club, a Facebook group that aims to connect people separated by partition. Reena's video soon reached Pakistan's Minister of State for Foreign Affairs, Hina Rabbani. Voila, Reena got the visa.
One is feel a very, very happy feeling that I am going to go and live my childhood again and I will see my house. But that with that pain is also very much that without any reason we were forced to leave our house.
Reena is grateful to the Facebook group and the power of social media.
But now when I heard that there is a Punjab group on Facebook, I have taken to technology that has helped me very much to be in contact with people from Pakistan.
Reena's family left Pakistan when she was just 15 years old. Since then, she planned visits, but they never materialized. At the age of 90, Reena will finally get to see her place of birth. With Pankaj Kelkar in Pune, Bureau Report, India Today.
Artemis 1 is NASA's effort for an unmanned mission to the moon's surface. Block 1, the basic version of the Space Launch System, is NASA's heavy launcher. At its top is the Orion spacecraft. Orion goes into orbit around the Earth. It is the immediate cryogenic propulsion stage that will give Orion the big thrust needed to leave the Earth's orbit and head for the moon. To navigate in space, Orion will be powered by a service module that also generates air and water for astronauts on future missions. Orion will approach around 100 kilometers from the moon and will take advantage of its gravitational force to reach a distant orbit at about 70,000 kilometers from the moon between 6 to 19 days. Once Orion's performance has been analyzed, the module will head back to Earth, taking advantage of the moon's gravitational pull. NASA will conduct scientific experiments in deep space with several nanosatellites deployed during this mission. If the results of this mission are validated, it will be followed by the Artemis II mission, which will carry 4 astronauts around the moon on board the Orion spacecraft.
You are watching India.
The Bermuda Triangle, the Devil's Triangle, the Hoodoo Sea. This region in the western part of the North Atlantic Ocean has been of interest for decades. The mysterious place has captured the human imagination with unexplained disappearances of ships, planes, and people.